Hello, and welcome to Survival of the Thickest, where I'm starting the show off with a question. No pressure.
As in, like a quiz question.
Well, kind. I'm gonna give you some clues.
Not like a nice. How was your day, Cameron?
No.
How are
a
you
quiz
feeling?
question. I'm going to give you some clues, and you've got to name an animal for me.
Right.
Okay? So it was described as a strange and grotesque specimen of blank. 'Cause I won't say. I'll give it away. Bearing a ridiculous bent bill.
Wait, hang on. So these are.
This is a type of animal. I won't say it. A strange and grotesque specimen
I heard
something bearing a ridiculous bent bill.
See, look, obvious answer: bird or some sort of bird.
It is some sort of bird. Yeah.
It is a bird.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, you got that bit. A strange, grotesque specimen of a bird. I didn't want to give that bit away.
I was guessing that it was like a like one of those historical mistakes that just look really crap now. And I was like, they haven't described an elephant, have they?
No, it is a bird. It is a bird.
All right, well,
you want another clue?
Flamingo.
No? I'll give you another clue. It's actually related to the pigeon. That's the second clue. So it looks like a pigeon.
It looks like a pigeon, but it's got a bent bill.
Do you want your final clue?
Go on.
The island of Mauritius.
Oh. No, still got nothing.
The dodo.
Ah, okay.
There you go. We'll talk about dodos a little bit later on, okay? But that was what I was going to introduce you with. Because I was reading about them, and I found that rather intriguing description by a Dutch admiral. I won't attempt to pronounce his name.
Well, once again, I was kind of right with that. It's a historical description.
A strange and grotesque specimen of a bird bearing a ridiculous bent bill was the verdict of early 17th century Dutch admiral and explorer something I'm not going to pronounce.
Cool. Okay, we go for accuracy and authenticity on this show, and that's the attitude.
Wibrand.
No, you've done it.
No, I'll stop there. Right. Okay, how are we doing then? Summer is officially over. Am I right?
I guess it is. That's miserable.
Have you enjoyed it?
I have. Yeah, it's been really good fun.
Any more wheat measuring stories to tell?
Look, I haven't measured wheat in a long time. Okay, it's been mainly threshing.
Oh, okay.
For the time being. But yeah, it was my last day today.
Was it?
And everyone was really nice. I've got to show you my card now.
Oh, okay. You got a card?
Yeah. They were really nice. And they're like, oh yeah, hope you think about coming back next year. Hope we haven't put you off or anything. And I was like, don't worry, the last 3 months haven't put me off wheat for life. I'm still.
I'll still have Cheerios. And I won't pick out the wheat ones.
And sure enough, on the card, they've sellotaped
look at that.
A nice head of wheat. Awns and all, a nice awny one.
Yeah, so you've got about, 15 descriptions of lovely comments. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Come back again. And then...
But the main deal...
The main attraction is 3 inches of wheat stuck on the left-hand side of the card.
Perfect. Could I ask for more?
No.
Great fun.
I don't think you could. I think that is exactly what every leaving card needs. Let's hope you don't ever work in a sewers. Just smear something down the side of the page. Anyway, so obviously end of the summer means we are heading back to Manchester and Keele, respectively, yeah?
Yeah.
So I thought we'd start off today with a story that has come from those two universities.
Both of them?
Yes, they were joint in a project. I was like, oh, there you go,
joint,
perfect.
Like solely joint, as in just the two of them?
No, there was many unis involved, but
they were just amongst the...
Manchester, Keele and Middlesex were the 3 kind of main ones here.
Okay, cool.
So, a major study led by the University of Manchester. So it was led by you.
Oh, all right, okay.
Obviously.
No, obviously.
Because
I heard Manchester, Keele, Middlesex, and I'm like, okay, well, if we're going to rank them, like, you're in the right order.
They're in the right order. The so-called lonely microbes, those living at low population densities, are more likely to mutate, causing higher rates of antibiotic resistance. So what it's saying is, let's say you have a high density of microbes, let's just say bacteria, okay? You are more likely to get a mutation in those bacteria at a lower population density than a higher population density.
That doesn't sound right, but go on.
So after analysing 70 years of data and nearly 500 different measurements of mutations, the studies show that individual microbes, such as bacteria, found in denser microbial populations mutate much less than microbes in sparser groups.
Is the theory there because in order to become dense, a dense population,
Yeah.
they need to be in quite favourable conditions anyway. So there aren't as many selection pressures. Is that the theory?
Well, we'll get
here?
on to it. Yeah, essentially. So yeah, in collaboration with universities of Keele and Middlesex. Apparently, this was based on previous research done looking at specifically the bacterium of E. coli, that classic. Found that lonely bacteria were 10 times as likely to mutate to resist antibiotics as those living in dense populations. So what this is getting onto is a concept they call density-associated mutation rate plasticity. I can't even say it.
Plasticity. I'll give you a clean one.
Thank you. Or DAMP for short. I wish I thought it was a rather depressing term. DAMP.
It's not damp for a woodlouse.
I quite like it.
It's not
My
damp.
woodlouse.
It's not depressing for a woodlouse.
DAMP is a way these mutation rates vary with the microbe's environment. The researchers found that DAMP could play a key role in reducing the mutations that cause antibiotic resistance. This is the key bit. It was partially funded by the WHO.
Oh yeah.
And the kind of the aim was to, obviously it's quite a common concept of, rather than whenever you have an issue or a problem, rather than dealing with the problem after it's happened, preventing the problem from happening in the first place. That's a common, almost like a health and safety thing, isn't it?
Yep, sure.
Rather than have to deal with a consequence, just cut out the risk altogether. Well, that's essentially what it's looking at. So it's saying, rather than us having to every year look at how we deal with the mutations of bacteria, let's just say the flu or something like that, and viruses as well, let's think about and deal with what makes them mutate in the first place.
And you know what? It's interesting because historically there's precedent for that, because back in the day when an amputation, you're almost definitely gonna die.
Yeah.
Some of you might live without the leg, but instant infection on that stump,
Yeah.
or you just die of the shock. Anyway, I can't remember who or when, because once again, authenticity and accuracy is something we really go for on this podcast. But it was we're talking like 1700s,
Yeah.
when they finally decided, okay, right, we've kind of got disinfectants down. They're not perfect, obviously, because we've got the 99.9% removal of bacteria soap now, but back in the day, they did what they could with various acids and stuff.
Yeah.
It only took one bright spark, or like I don't know, whoever, does not matter. But
Some
they
clever
said,
person.
okay, why don't we clean the surfaces and use clean tools rather than cleaning up the wounds afterwards
That have already been infected.
Yeah, exactly. So the theory is you make a antiseptic environment.
Yeah.
And that's the model
Will reduce the amount of.
That's the models that hospitals work on
today.
now. You know, they have latex gloves, completely disposable. They can hop on a new one.
Yeah.
They can steam clean the equipment, and they can bring out new equipment with every fresh leg that needs a good hacking.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Vacuum packed and all that.
Yeah, precisely.
Ionized as well. There you go.
Oh yeah, all that crap. Yeah.
Something that you've never thought you'd hear a person say. What's exciting about damp, if you get the joke there, there you go, is that it requires protein molecules that do the same thing in very different microbes, meaning that we can start to understand why mutation rates vary like this. This means that our results could be the first steps towards manipulating microbial damp clinically as a way to slow the evolution of antibiotic resistance.
That's cool.
So yeah, it's all about preventing rather than trying to cure.
Yeah, that is cool.
I will say, to be fair, it was actually funded by the Biotechnology and Biological Sciences Research Council, or the BBSRC.
Right.
It goes back quite a long way, actually.
What, all this
70
all this
years of
damp
data.
research?
Yeah,
okay.
70 years. And 500 different measurements of the types of mutations. And it says here there were 68 independent studies of 26 species of microbes, and that if you were to lie every single cell that had been created down in a line, it would stretch from Manchester to Newfoundland, Canada.
That is
There you
pretty
go.
cool.
What an exciting fact.
You know, what's interesting is, and I would love to read more into this in my own time, because I still don't get quite why the reason of that is.
Yeah.
Because sort of using sort of logic alone, I'd be drawn to think that because microbes in a higher density, the fact that there are just literally more of them, mutation rates would be higher purely because there's more of them. And of course, the thing with bacteria is you can linearly
predict that.
No, I'm saying you can linearly transfer gene to gene. It's not like
right.
you know what I'm talking about. They can just pass from one bacteria to the next. It's not a matter of I'm dividing and now my sort of sister cell has that gene as well. It's a case of I can just give you this. This is quite handy. Give it a try.
It's like Lego, isn't it? Like, you get all the sets, but you can quite easily move the different parts around. Like, is that a 2x4 you need? There you go, you take that one, and then you'll swap them around.
You make a good point. Well done, because I was more than ready to go, and how is it like Lego? For God's sake, how on earth is it like Lego?
Oh, well, there you go. I just thought that was funny that it came up as both our unis, and they were both involved.
Isn't that nice? We're both working. Of course, we're working harder, but we're both working.
I would like to one day, obviously, I don't know about your page, but my Keele, but obviously the sciences are the most interesting area of research.
For you.
Oh, come on, for everybody.
It's cool if you'd like something else.
Sociology?
It's fine, but you're wrong, but it's cool. You're allowed to.
No, but I'm
it's
saying
fine if you think that way.
What I find most often comes up on the university page, as in like the public university page on Facebook, not like the freshers page, is like research that's been done in the science departments at the university. And I quite like to one day try and get somebody that's done one of those research projects and talk to them about it. Because there's one that one of my actual professors or lecturers that's done, who is very nice. She did one about cats and why people like cats, and obviously I hate cats, as I haven't mentioned.
Oh, there'd be some friction in the room.
It would be a funny one. Maybe we can try and set that up.
Finally, some disagreement on this podcast, some arguing.
Maybe we can try and set that up. That was an idea of mine.
Well, I mean, lofty ambitions on this podcast, don't we? One day we'll have Brian Cox sat next to us, saying, what's your tell us about string theory? How long is it? Does it vary? Oh, no, I didn't want to make that joke. But...
No, that's not the kind of thing we want on this podcast. There we go. Anyway, I'm afraid... That was another one. Afraid. Anyway,
dear.
I'm afraid we're going to move on now. Back to our favourite flightless bird, the dodo. Cool. Have you read anything about the dodo this week on the news?
Not recently in the news, but again, I've got something... I've got stuff in my locker, my brain locker,
ready to whip out about the dodo.
Well, no, just from the last couple of years of learning. The dodo's cropped up from time to time.
Well, I was thinking about what we were going to talk about this week, and one of my favourite episodes where we've developed stuff about what we've done at A-level and GCSE and then found out more about it or explain it a different way or that kind of thing. And I thought the dodo comes up quite a lot. It's your classic go-to human extinct animal scenario, hunt too much.
What, as in, it's our fault? Oh, you've said hunt too much.
Well, yeah, hunt too much, and then all the animal species that they put on the island and the fact that the dodo's eggs...
See, I don't want to...
are nested on the floor.
I don't want to hit you... No, I don't want to hit you with a hard spoiler. I don't know what you're about to bring up, but to my knowledge, I mean, obviously with no personal experience, but from second-hand reading, the dodo tasted proper disgusting.
Oh, right.
So apparently...
I mean, if you were a hungry Dutch sailor, you'd probably eat anything.
You make a good point, but I think there was absolutely no call for... they didn't go extinct for the hunting. It was the sailors bringing their cats.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. Monkeys, deer, pigs, rats, and other animals. So.
Well, they just tagged along for the journey.
I told you I hated cats. There you go. Extincted the dodo. And now argue why people like cats. Bring it. I'll shoot you down with anything. No, I was going to talk about approximately 100 years after humans first arrived on the island of Mauritius. Do you know where Mauritius is?
I've got a massive world map right behind me.
Oh my god, you have!
As it happens. And
where is it?
I still... I could turn around. It's not... Podcasting is it's not a visual medium.
No, I can't find it.
So it's not like you can appreciate the fact that I've turned around and gone, oh, where is it?
pointing to
that's bad podcasting.
I believe it to be around the Seychelles area, near Madagascar. Anyway, 100 years after humans first arrived on the island, that's when the dodo started to disappear. And in that first 100 years, obviously some descriptions were made of this bird, including the one I described earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, obviously, without the invention of the iPhone, there was no camera to take a decent picture. So, up until now, it's been quite hard to actually track the kind of morphology of the dodo.
Like what it actually
looked like. Until recently, this week or last week, a report was published, and it was using the bone histology of the dodo to try and explain what it looked like and kind of that kind of thing. That makes sense.
Again, I feel like I'm pulling all sort of the history answers. Maybe that's telling me something that's the facts that I remember the most. But some of the most well-renowned 19th century
paleontologist,
the
ones that looked at bones.
I think it was George Cuvier and people like that. He's the French guy.
Citations needed, but you'll take your word for it.
He was one of those sort of early evolutionary thinkers.
Yeah.
And I think he was the guy that was well renowned for looking like he could look at a hip bone or something, or a thigh bone, and he'd be like, okay, well, this is the approximate size of the thing. This is roughly what the walking gait would be like. Because of course, all the bone structures in mammals
are similar to some degree.
Or compared to lizards and dinosaurs, like they've got similar patterns.
They've got common theme,
overarching patterns. So you can compare a thigh bone of a megalodon, and with a golden retriever, and go, okay, bigger.
Well done. The fact that the thigh bone is larger than the entire skeleton of the golden retriever has concluded that it was probably bigger.
If we'd invented the Nobel Prize, we'd give you one, mate.
The area this is kind of coming under, I learnt a new science word, was ontology.
Ontology?
Or ontology is the origination and development of an organism. Pretty simple. Okay. Or obviously the actual process is ontogenesis.
Nice. That's even cooler. Let's stick with
word,
that. Let's go with that one.
So what they found out, what they found out I didn't particularly think was that interesting, but it's the way that they found it out and the fact that they could find it out that I thought was quite interesting. What they found out was that, 2 points. The chicks of the dodo hatched in August, and then they grew quite rapidly, a little bit like chickens do. You know, obviously, dodos not after years of selection pressure, but there you go. And then the bird molted or shed its feathers in March, revealing the fluffy grey plumage recorded in historical accounts by mariners. That was done at the University of Cape Town in South Africa, looking at slices of 22 different dodo skeletons. Apparently, they're quite hard to come by these days. I'm having a look online, and they sell for quite a good bit, about 350k. I've seen a dodo skeleton go for.
Pretty rare at this point. I mean, they're not making them anymore, so
no. It's an outdated model.
They're out of production. Yeah. Limited edition.
Limited edition. Oh dear. Apparently, the reason why they had the birds shedded their feathers in March and then they had the fluffy stuff underneath was because of the number of cyclones and the terrible weather they had during the kind of summer season, that kind of thing. Right. And then that would obviously, survival of the fittest, the bird that was most prepared would survive, and then that's how it worked. They took several years to reach sexual maturity, possibly because the adult birds lacked any natural predators. So obviously, I think what that's referring
on the island.
To, what I think that's referring to is the fact that if a particular species did have a lot of natural predators, then the infants of the species would have to develop into an adult pretty quickly in order to help them to survive, and because the dodo did not have any of those natural predators to hunt them down, it could take all the time it liked becoming an adult.
No rush. Is that not essentially the same as humans?
Quite possibly, yeah. Makes sense.
I'm pretty sure there are other like mice. Once they're popped out, they're essentially ready to go, almost like forage for themselves. Yeah. Whereas, of course, humans, depending on how sad you are and depending on the economy, it may take you
Quite
maybe
a while.
30 years before you before you leave your parents' house.
Or if you went to uni and got a degree and then ended up in McDonald's or something like that. That's what you get when you do social sciences.
Here we go. Just
we're never not going to have a dig in this podcast. And then the final thing I wanted to mention about the dodo. That's pretty much it in terms of that first part of the article. But then I was researching into more about the dodo because it's quite an interesting animal, isn't it? It's so popular, infamous, you might say, for being the bird or the species that we obviously that humans were.
And yet all the interpretations are like, oh, what a stupid bird, jumping off cliffs, following their mates. I don't know how true that is, but
but yeah,
I imagine the Dutch sailors were just feeling guilty, to be honest.
Well, they were doing it a favour by eating it.
No, as in like they were saying, oh, they were stupid birds anyway. I mean, our cats drove them to extinction, but come on, they would have extincted themselves.
Obviously, that's not the only ever example of humans driving an animal to extinction. Unfortunately, it's sad to say.
We're pretty good at it, yeah.
It's our thing. Another member of
become the dominant species,
by
wipe out the rest.
I believe it's the Raffineae family, or clad even. Clad is the correct biology term. Not quite above a genus, but not a genus on its own, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Was a bird called the Rodriguez solitaire. It's not as interesting. I thought it had a cool name, so I thought that's worth bringing up. Not as interesting in terms of what it's actually done, but it did go extinct around the 1730s to 1760s.
So not a dissimilar time.
Not a dissimilar time. Apparently, a bloke called Joseph Francais... I can't do French. French bloke called Joseph. We've had Dutch and French today. This guy attempted to attain a live specimen around 40 years later. Because he'd been told
its extinction.
Yeah, but obviously back in those days, extinction was a bit of a broader term. It's not like they.
And then I guess they don't really know. They're just like,
hey,
Jean, have you seen many? Have you seen any of the Rodrigo? No, I'm not.
Are you going over the French?
Look, it was somewhere in between.
Have you seen any of the Rodriguez solitaire birds? Oh, no.
I haven't seen one of those in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I don't know.
That was so bad.
Let's never do that again.
No. Apparently he set out a rather hefty financial reward if you could find one on the island, and you didn't find one. So there you go. That's the end of the story.
Well, he saved his money then.
He did, yeah. Actually, no, the other thing I found out about this bloke, this is why I love going on Wikipedia, you just go down little avenues all the time. This Joseph bloke, he was the first person to introduce the lychee, do you know the fruit?
Fruit,
lychee, to the islands of Bourbon. There you go. I found out a little fact there.
What? The islands of Bourbon?
You know.
Are you trying to tell me that they didn't have lychee before this bloke brought it in?
No, he is an innovator.
Hell.
He is an innovator.
Sure. Next thing you'll be saying there's dodos in France again.
But the interesting thing that kind of does relate the two species was that cats were also blamed for the decimation of the same species of the Rodriguez.
Oh, I know what this is. This is your vendetta episode. I remember early on.
I've been boiling it up.
Early on, I did sort of the intro, and I was like, "Snakes are dicks. Don't like them."
Yeah.
But I left it there.
Yeah.
Okay. You have themed this entire episode
about
reasons why cats suck.
I think I put a strong case forward.
That's actually two species extinct, all because
of birds.
All because of
cats.
cats.
Cats, obviously. Although the cats were introduced by the humans.
I was going to say, yeah, as much as you would like to air your vendetta to the internet, let's not take any of the credit for extinction away from our fine ancestors.
Yeah, we did a smashing job. Right, well that's the end.
And long may we continue to wipe the earth dry.
We'll be back in
any
50
variety.
years' time talking about the common wood pigeon, that famous species that we once described as dumb and idiotic, now extinct. Because we killed them. Anyway, that's the end of the dodo story. But I would just like to pose one interesting question, a thought-provoking one to end on. So obviously we've had the devastating and terrible news of the hurricane in America, Houston, Texas, I believe.
You got to know. Yes, I've heard of this. No, I'm very bad at keeping up with the news.
No, that's fine. We're not going to go into too much detail
essential
about it. Obviously, it's devastating. Like you look at the pictures, it's proper bad. I mean, I had a rainy day at work the other day, and it was nothing compared to it. I was reading.
They had to close the zip wire for like a minute.
Yeah.
Like, let's wait till the drizzle calms down, so everyone has not as fast an entry into the safety net.
I was reading an article about it, and obviously, like the weather. Obviously, a hurricane is just a very extreme form of normal weather. It is, to a certain extent, quite predictable. Like, we know roughly what the weather's going to be at some point in time.
Yeah, it's quite impressive, really, how you can go on the internet or like an app on your phone. It's just like, all right, so you got like an 80% chance of rain.
Yeah.
I'm like, geez, okay.
I'll take my gamble. Here we go. Sun hat and shorts. Let's rock it. Bring on the 20%. I don't know how it works particularly well with insurance, because insurance is not something that I've had to deal a lot with in my life, but especially home insurance and stuff like that. I believe either in America or all over the world, a hurricane is described as a quote-unquote act of God.
So like a sort of a freak of nature.
A freak of nature, something that could not be predicted or controlled. And yet, there was quite a lot of... Well, I mean, like they knew it was happening. They knew it was going to come, and they knew it was going to be bad. Obviously, it's hard to determine how bad.
Well, that's the thing. How bad? I imagine you have a rough idea how bad.
Yeah.
But I think the problem with insurers is they're giving you an annual premium, right?
Yeah.
You're only going to hear about this hurricane. I don't know what the prediction rate is, but like I imagine you've only got like a few weeks to a month.
Yeah.
When you're like, there's a storm coming.
There's a storm a brewing.
Yeah. Like an epic movie headline.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the point was obviously with climate change and all that jazz, it's been predicted that the number of hurricane cyclones will increase as we go on. So there comes a point where these lawyers, they were called environment lawyers, don't know what you do for a job, but it sounds quite interesting. They made the point of, well, what happens when people could literally, in theory, sue, I don't know, I don't want to say the government, but sue the services of the nation because they have not fully prepared for a hurricane. So, because obviously, an individual landowner can only really protect their own house. But there's a point to be made about the dams. Like, I know that the Houston Dam was over-flooded.
That's a classic for, like, often mal-maintained and ill-prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's going to become more and more frequent now. That's all it was. It was, is there going to be a point where a hurricane being an act of God almost isn't an act of God anymore because it's an act of ourselves. That's what we've done.
Well, I mean, that requires that... I was going to put my tinfoil hat on, but it's quite obvious. It's out there. That comes about when all of the significant world leaders can at least, put 100% into it.
It's very hard to pinpoint, Hurricane Harvey, that was because, I drove my car to work the other day and global warming.
The problem is, with climate change, is that there's no responsibility. There's no sort of application of blame because it's on all of us.
Oh, of course.
Like we all drive cars.
Yeah.
We all do things that harm our environment. We all eat meat well, not all of us. Some of us are very preachy about the whole thing.
Yeah.
But some of us enjoy a nice bacon sandwich, and that in itself is quite environmentally harmful.
Yeah.
However, there's no placement of blame, and therefore there is no taking of responsibility to make it better.
Yeah.
And the problem is often too big for one person to fix.
Yeah.
Which is why the people that really are in a position to make a difference have to act on it. And like, funnily enough, I mean, this is almost old news now, but I mean, it's still semi-relevant.
Yeah.
Because of course we were voting members of the public when Brexit rolled around.
Oh yeah.
And I voted Remain. I believed in Remain, but I don't think mine was the sort of common opinion. I didn't care about the economy or anything like that. I just felt like
single market.
I just felt like we're distracting ourselves. Like, why would we be arrogant enough to worry about ourselves as a single country when we should all be worrying about the world and
that we all live on,
and hurricanes that are gonna come crashing through our doorways
at any moment.
Yeah,
it's a very valid point you make. Well, that was a rather nice somber ending. I quite enjoyed that.
All the jokes we cracked earlier on, and we've really hit home with some political analysis and science.
Yeah. So let's end it there. Are you ready for your final year, Cam, at uni?
No.
No. Good answer. Nice.
No. Of course, like I'm keen to get out of my comfort zone again. Like, you know, get myself into challenging situations. But you know how it is. That only lasts for like
4 weeks.
You know what I mean? Like, I was saying this to you the other day. I was like, okay, it's fine for the first 2 weeks, and then deadline 1 rocks up.
Yeah.
And then your tutor will tell you, oh, you have to do this essay, but don't worry about it. It's not really being... it's a tutor thing, so you don't have to do well. But I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, but that's still 3 pages I've got to do by 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
And all the while it's like, and another deadline, and another deadline, and then you're like, oh well, now exams are on the way.
Yeah.
And I think, whilst third year, I've been trying to, like, you know, people that are worrying, I'm trying to, like, well, calm down, because it's nothing you haven't faced before. It's just coursework and exams, the same as it has been for the last 5 years, as far as you're concerned. Like, that's how long you've been doing all of this shit.
Yeah.
Whereas, of course, third year is just a harder version of all of that.
Yeah. Oh, okay, and that is dinner ready. So, thank you very much for listening. Cameron's gonna run off and have his dinner. Okay, I'm not sure when the next one will be, because obviously university's coming up, pressures and all that, but we'll try and squeeze it in as best you can. Cameron's going to go and enjoy his dinner. Is he back? Oh, he's back. Is he going to say goodbye?
Bye, everyone. It's meatballs and spaghetti.
Nice! Oh, we will see you next time on Survival of the Thickest.